Hey, everybody. Welcome to Monday morning and the Dev Talk Show here in 2023. We're winding down the third quarter of 2023. I can't believe it.
Getting
It is,
close.
yeah, I know. I was thinking earlier, there's a date on the calendar when there's 90 days left in the year. And I'm guessing that's like early October. I
Mhm.
mean, reasonable guess.
Yeah.
And I think, oh my gosh, that's like now almost. So So, okay, I'm certainly not ready for this year to be over. But once again, live on the Dev Talk Show here with my co host, Rich Ross. Great to see you and glad that you are feeling better. That's awesome.
Thank you. Great to be seen. Great to be out of the house again. So
Yeah,
I'm quite happy.
that's
First day
that's
back in the office. So
okay. Cool. Yeah, and back in the office. So my office, my home office, I've been cleaning it a little bit, and I realized as I was going on the air, I said, "Oh, like there's a backpack still sitting on the floor behind me. Whatever. I think it'll be okay." But you have some
sure.
really cool stuff behind you.
I, yeah, over the last year or so, I started to accumulate little Lego um, sets, if you will. So I don't know if it's just off to there's a X-wing there and a TIE fighter in the back, of course. We got the Star Wars things covered. But the one that I've been putting together a lot lately is it's a collection you can still get out. It's kind of right about here. There are 4 individual scenes that I believe were created by NASA. One depicts Mars, one depicts the moon, one depicts deep space, and I forget what the fourth one is. But essentially, they make a collage of scenes, and that's what the 4 across the back are. So I just finished the fourth one this morning. But yeah, just something to kind of do while you're, maybe listening in on a call. These are one of those things that kind of, get your brain going a little bit as well in the morning too. So that's the other reason I like doing while it's still kind of quiet in here.
Yeah, that's
Um,
pretty cool. I love it. I love all the little stuff back there. And then yeah, I mean, there's actually plenty of Legos here in the house too. My daughter likes playing with Legos, and something that's hit us recently is there more and more Disney collections.
oh
So
yeah.
there's a Haunted Mansion Disney Lego set that I got for my wife for her birthday. Haunted Mansion's her favorite ride, and then she recently, I didn't know about this. She recently found that they had just come out with a Big Ben. It's meant to be the scene from Peter Pan where they land on the clock, and she it came in the mail. It came, stopped up at the door. I said, "Well, this is for you." She opened it up, and she was like, "Yeah, I hope you weren't looking for presents because she takes out this would have been a perfect present for a birthday or Christmas or whatever." And it was like, well, okay. So yeah, Peter Pan's definitely your favorite movie. So
Nice.
anyways, here we are on the Dev Talk Show, and last time we were on, what I tried to do is I wanted to go, and you were there joining us, Rich, in the
Hmm.
chat. Is I
How's
was
that?
I was trying to start new projects in ASP.NET Core 7, which shipped with .NET 7 last year. I mean, Blazor's been around longer than that, but we've looked specifically at the .NET 7 file new projects and compared it to the .NET 8 file new project. And I know when I was looking at these individually, I found it really interesting. First of all, how different just the standard out of the box template was for Blazor Server versus Blazor WebAssembly. The Blazor Server one seemed to have to set up more stuff.
Hmm.
And as you were just looking at the code, it sort of felt like Blazor Server, and this may not be total, this may be totally unfair at all, because sometimes our code API names get stale and they lie to us, and you're calling some API and you know that it's actually doing more than it says it's doing. But it seemed like Blazor Server was really a Razor Pages app that had the server interactivity through a Signal R connection, and that you
Hmm.
put Blazor components on the pages and the routing and all that stuff. Where Blazor WebAssembly seemed more like, yes, you still have all that feature functionality when you're building your forms, your components, and everything, but it was just this kind of line of code that said like, okay, wrap it all up.
Right.
And that must have been what ships off the WASM. Um, and with Blazor 8 in .NET 8, ASP.NET Core 8, we just get this one unified template now.
Right.
and you decide as a developer, do you want to limit it to one transport? I don't know if transport mode is the right way to say it, but do you want to have one hosting model? Maybe that's not even correct either, because that's hosting isn't the same as how this interactivity works.
Right.
Do you want to have one form of interactivity, both? Do you want Blazor to decide? So that was very interesting. So
And that's
yeah.
cool because, maybe at the beginning, you're thinking things are one way. And as you start to build out the product or somebody comes along with different requirements, now in that project, you have the flexibility to go where, the requirements define, as opposed to completely redoing your application, which was how it was in the previous model.
Yeah, it seemed like you unless you really architected your application to be very separate, which you can do,
Mm-hmm.
you had to make a decision pretty early on which model you wanted. Did you want Blazor Server? Did you want Blazor WebAssembly? There were certainly published pros and cons to both, no doubt about that. But now it seems that, well, as your website grows, you might make some switches here and there. It'll be really interesting to see putting something like this into production and saying, okay, how does your site evolve with you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty exciting.
And even to the point of saying, these components are, server side rendered, and these components are WebAssembly rendered, right? So I've got that
Yeah,
flexibility to say, I want this to be something that runs, has the ability to download and run on the client, which is pretty cool.
that's a real interesting idea too. It makes me wonder if there's some value in, if you have some high interactivity thing like a board game section, would you want that to be Blazor? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't
Yeah.
matter, but would you want to try out the Blazor WebAssembly for that? I don't know. That's very interesting. And then other parts of it, maybe as Blazor Server. I don't know. That might be something fun to try out. So
Mhm.
in any case, what I want to do now is I want to. We're on the path to building the Dev Talk Show website. Maybe just a little bit at a time before stand up when we get online here. And we're on the path to doing it. And so one of the first things I think almost everyone needs, I mean, most web developers can write some HTML copy, and most web frameworks don't make that really easy to figure out. It doesn't matter what front end templating system you're using. But now it's time to get into the nitty gritty of interactivity and inputs and components. And so I wanted to take a look at how do we put these controls into a Blazor component that, for our purposes, I think will just be a Blazor page to start.
Okay.
So let me get switched up here. First of all, let's see. This is the fun part. The first thing we want is switch the desktop, switch our position on here, and there we go.
Nice.
All right. I'm still not sharing
Share the screen. Yeah.
Got to do that. So we're going to share. As you can see, everything here is live, and we don't have a producer in the background who is clicking this for us, which is fine. I'm not complaining about shows that have that.
One last thing, you might want to get rid of the logo.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, we'll get rid of the logo. It's right over my face here.
Right.
Folks don't want to see me, then there it is. Okay, so here it is. I've got, this happens to be, in case you're wondering, Visual Studio 2022 preview.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go ahead and open the Windows terminal, which, just because, oh, look, a new release of Oh My Posh. That was last time too. And the only thing I'm going to do here is say .NET list. I got to do a second one, and I'm going to hit the right arrow to autocomplete. And I do have this preview 800. I think this is the latest preview still. Pretty sure. Preview 7 of .NET 8, which includes ASP.NET Core 8. I think on a future show we'll build this in the command line and Visual Studio Code, just to, I'm using the preview today, but you don't have to. You can use whatever editor you like. Something I would really like to do, I would like to take a little bit of time to get other editors working too that are support like language server protocol and stuff like I'm really interested in getting NeoVim working. So if anybody watching, if you're watching now or in the future on YouTube, let us know in the comments if you've used neovim with .NET. I have some blog posts I'm working off of. If you have, and you have some tips for us, let us know. I'm real interested in trying that out, because then I want to like bring the whole thing to Linux, and or even like a Linux, an SSH into a Linux server and still get this editing experience. I think would be really fun. So, all right, how do we get started? First, we're going to say file, new project, and it's going to be Blazor web app. So we may end up building this a couple times as we sort of like figure out what we want to do. But if we decided that this was going to be the Dev Talk Show site as a solution, maybe this project might be like .web. I mean, we can decide if we, interesting, they're going to put it in .web. The location is source. That's okay. It's, oh, no. This is what I want. There we go. I want the solution, the Dev Talk Show, a project name, web, and it looks like it's still, oh, it's creating the project in a subfolder. That's good. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll go with that. And we can always change it. So clicking next here, this might be, I wish I could make that just a touch bigger. So in any case, we're getting some options here, which is .NET 8 previews, fine. I'm going to go ahead and configure it for HTTPS, and I am going to say let's have the server interactivity.
Yeah.
We were not going to use it today, but we've got it in our project, and I think we know what bits add that. I like top-level statements, so I'm going to go ahead and use them. If you don't like them, that's okay. Oh, a solution already exists on disk. How about that? So let's say no for a second. And now I wonder what solution that is, actually. It could be our current site for all I know. I am going to move it, just move it out of the way, because this is what you do. You just pick it up, and everybody watching, there's really only one place to move this. You just move it to the desktop somewhere. That's, that way it's nice, and in your, you tell yourself, I won't forget it. Yeah, I won't forget about where I put it later. But then what really is going to happen is I'll have 30 of these folders on my desktop, and then you get like you declare desktop bankruptcy. and so you just grab your recycle bin and just go, okay, I'm sure everything's in source control. So
right.
Little fun there. Please don't do that. Well, I mean, not with production code anyway. So here we are. I have my new project. You get a little nice sort of welcome, like here you are, and we don't really need this. Oh, I even clicked on publishing, and a modal dialog came up to talk about publishing. We don't need that today. What's more important is let's take a look at our solution. We've been given a program CS, an app.razor that is basically the main guts of the thing, and then we've got some pages and models, and we're kind of ready to go here. So anything we want to look at here, whoops, I opened app settings. What I meant to do was open app.razor, and app.razor kind of gets routing going by using the router component and saying that you want to use this layout view. And you go, oh, layout view, well, that's interesting. And so it turns out that sitting in shared, layout view is a built-in control that the Blazor folks have provided to allow you to kind of lay out your page and get, it kind of gives you a path to routing and sort of your way to have menus and stuff. It's not required. You don't have to use it. But it is, we're telling the layout control and the router control that if you want to see the default layout, look at a class that's our own class called main layout.
Mm-hmm.
This is our class. Here it is right here in shared, main layout.razor. And this is just pretty straightforward, saying, okay, this is what our web page is going to look like from page to page. Is we're going to have a nav menu that we'll look at in a little bit. And we're going to have just this, basically a link to go straight to the ASP.NET Core documentation. We'll probably take that out later. The body of your page just gets rendered right here. And so we can come back to this later to kind of create our whole Dev Talk Show layout. I think for now, today we're going to look like every other Blazor starting app as we kind of mess around with controls. But as we get further into the project, then I think we'll be able to start making it look more like the Dev Talk Show, right?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, real quick, a lot of folks, if you've watched this show, you've probably seen us start and run this a million times. But let's just go ahead and run it. And this is going to run in Kestrel, which is the uh, web server that comes with ASP.NET Core. It is production ready and fully supported. And I'm pretty sure that keeps Barry Dorans up at night. At least that's what I've heard. He is a ASP.NET security expert that maybe works with more teams than just the ASP.NET and .NET teams, but I know that he definitely puts a lot of time in with them. And here's what the app looks like. I just like picking on him because I think he's such a smart and also very humorous person when he talks on stage about security. I just always really enjoy it. I love a security person's sense of humor because it's always like, "What have you done to me now?" So this is it. I've got it way zoomed in. If I go ahead and hit Control-0 in my browser, that's kind of the view, but kind of far away for people watching online. What we have been given, and we're going to look at this in a second, is we have 3 pages: home, the infamous counter that you can click and click and click, and weather, which this is simulating getting data from the server. We'll do more than simulating later in our project. We actually want to get data from various sources, including YouTube, and I think we even want to output some data. We could have our schedule and an RSS feed, and then we know certainly there are many places on the web that are looking for RSS feeds to promote as part of calendars, and we could get picked up there. That would be great.
Yeah.
So, oh, and then there's an about page here, but the about page doesn't really go to a page of ours. This is what I was showing earlier. It links straight to the ASP.NET documentation, opens it in a new tab. So if we just want to see that about link in code, let's walk back to main layout. And here it is. If you know a little HTML, here's a link, and it just looks like anybody else's link because it's just HTML at this point, saying to go to a new tab, and the content is about. But the interesting part is this main page is setting up the router and setting up the layout. That's not here. It's in other places. The nav menu is here. Mm-hmm. And this menu is currently pointing to the 3 pages saying you can go home, you can go to counter, you can go to weather. And you know what's interesting about it is it doesn't look special. You know, like, yes, we have this nav link routing component, but the href is just hey, go to counter, go to weather, go to nothing or home. Mm-hmm. You know, or a little bit of thing here that says, like, you know, go ahead and match, you know, if it matches the current URL, then like just go there, right? So I think this is kind of the way to get that catch-all behavior that you usually want, instead of having to have the specific like /counter or /weather. This will be very easy to change, I think. But now let's look at the components. So we have 3 pages. They're stored in a pages folder. I don't actually think there's any requirement that they're in a pages folder. I think you can do what you like. You could make a components folder and then have your pages be very bare. We can look into that kind of stuff.
I think it's more for organization at that point, yeah. Right? You got a folder, that's where they all live.
Right. It's organization, yeah. And the thing about that I think I want to stress is that, you know, the organization is up to you. You and your team do not have to go with the organization you're seeing in the folders. Mm-hmm. So the homepage, real simple. We saw this. We saw that the homepage, welcome to your new app. We saw that, pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot here, just simple looking HTML. If you're unfamiliar with Blazor, there is a page title component that by default will render the HTML title markup. And so that's basically how, when we're looking here, I am getting, got to look real close, I am getting home up in the upper left corner there. And this is definitely the most Blazor thing on this page. This is an attribute that is saying, it's hooking up routing and saying if somebody just comes to /, which is basically no page at all, then here's the component you want. I'm the component you want. So we'll look at counter and see the same thing, saying the page is counter. It's specifying that we're going to use Blazor server for this particular page. I think in a future show we'll work on switching that or maybe using the auto mode, but I don't see a need to concentrate on that today.
Yeah.
And this is really kind of the demo of what Blazor looks like if you've never seen it before. Is one way to do things is to use HTML to lay out your page. This looks very much like a typical button HTML, except for one little difference. And I know that many years ago, JavaScript developers, or whether you're using a framework or even if you're just using vanilla JavaScript, have switched away from the on-click method right in line in the element. I think this was called, nowadays nobody might remember this name, but I want to say that this was called like unobtrusive JavaScript. When developers were going to meetups and saying, don't do on click anymore, go wire up an event somewhere else. Do it in like your ready method if it was jQuery. That's how long ago this was. Or if you've just written your own method, DOM ready method, which is something I like to do. Go do it somewhere else. Don't do on click equals JavaScript anymore. So you might look at this and say like, oh my gosh, we're doing the same thing again. But this is Razor syntax. This is not going to be rendered in the final HTML. Instead, this is picking up, Blazor is picking this up and saying, oh, when somebody clicks on this button, this is the code you want to run.
Yeah.
You want to run increment count. An increment count is going to just add 1 to this counter. And this counter is just some private variable. It just seems so like, oh, wow, you're just mixing this code right in here. How does this work? Well, this is also in a Razor block, a Razor syntax block. We're going to see in just a second, the what is this called? The @ sign. That's how it's Monday morning.
Yeah.
That's how the @ sign is like activating Razor syntax, and Blazor picks this up, takes it out. We're not going to focus this on this show. There are folks, especially if you've worked with ASP.NET, maybe web forms or other frameworks, who might look at this and say, oh, wait a second, the code's like right here. I don't know how I feel about that. It feels too much like maybe classic ASP. Okay, fine.
Sure.
I think we can have a whole show on this, or whether there's another technique you can use where you can move the code away. We could look at that another time.
Yeah.
We're not going to look at it today.
So a question, and maybe this is something, again, we'll put a pin in and we'll look at it in the future. But when I see all of that, I would guess that somewhere behind the scenes, Blazor's looking at, you said Blazor's looking at that @onClick event, and it is wiring up essentially the event handler for the click somewhere.
Yeah.
Because we used to do that in the code, right? We used to have a page behind, and we had your .cs file, and you would say, button.event handler or button.click plus equals event handler, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I think in ASP.NET Web Forms, the earliest form of ASP.NET, it was very much code behind. If you have enough gray hair, it felt a lot like VB6 or MFC and C++, where there was that code behind model. That code behind model is still popular in other languages and platforms and frameworks too. It was a very productive model. And I think a lot of times when people see Blazor, it gives them maybe some flashbacks to ASP.NET Web Forms, which were very productive for a very long time, at least the first 10 years of ASP.NET. And then ASP.NET MVC came along and kind of gave developers the first, ASP.NET developers, the first look at like, well, what would it be like if we concentrated on architecture of an application and not so much like a model of visual programming.
Yeah.
And look, MVC became very popular. I think it's fair to say it became dominant in new projects. There is plenty of web forms code still out there.
Yep.
But
and it
MVC
still runs.
Yeah, still works, still runs. I think it definitely became dominant in terms of new projects. So let's, in order to get some controls down, what I want to do is we won't disturb counter. Let's create a new page, and there will be a new component in our page. Oh, actually, what I wanted to do real quick is before we do that is you asked a great question about what does Blazor do? Well, as developers, we have a developer console. I don't know the answer to this question. So if you're new to the Dev Talk Show, welcome, because this is exactly what happens is we love to take a look at the questions that don't get answered in a typical demo. Just what is coming to mind? What are you thinking as you're watching this? And let's see, we got a bunch of CSS that got rendered, and we have our counter app, but it's funny, I don't feel like I'm seeing a whole lot. Let me try it this way by saying, let's click here. Okay, here we go. So I ended up here in elements, and what we have is we just have, I'm gonna have to zoom in, or which I can do. Okay, that should be much better. We've zoomed in there.
There you go.
Okay. Yep. So that button is being rendered right here. It still has the CSS class because that was just normal HTML code.
Yeah.
But the Razor syntax has disappeared. So the initialize, the increment counter handler is nowhere to be found here. Now, you might be like, well, where did it go?
Right.
And I think probably the fairest answer for where did it go is we're not going to find a JavaScript file with it, because I personally believe that the Blazor Web JS script is taking care of all of this.
Okay.
And I don't even know if we can really jump into this because I think this is pretty generic. It doesn't mean we can't go to it. Certainly, we would be able to go to it. It's just sitting right here. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's entirely possible that we would find it in here. But just so you can see, there's a lot to dig through. I'm wondering now, though. I'm just wondering, what was it called? Increment count. Try an I. So I'm not running into something specific there. I'm not trying to say that it's not here. It could also have been renamed. Right. I don't know. It could be that there might be a way that I can point to this element, and it might be possible for me to see its handlers. That would be a use of the dev console that I'm not. Oh, event listeners. Here we go. So if I click on event listeners and pick click, I've got to click here. There's a handler here, ZR. I don't know if this is it. It makes me wonder if I can jump straight to it, though. So, the point of this is not, don't get me wrong, I think it's fun to dig into how does it work.
Right.
But I think show function definition. And so there's something here. Again, I do not know if it's calling another function called PE. This sounds like we could really go diving into some minimized code. But my suspicion is that's how that's all working. So okay. The fact of the matter is, this is not going to show up in your rendered HTML. And more importantly, it is not the old style on-click event. It is the quote-unquote unobtrusive JavaScript, which I don't even think is a term people really use anymore. I think it was used when the evangelists for JavaScript were trying to get people to stop doing inline and go attach from the outside, because it solved the problem of it addressed the problem of your HTML being tightly coupled to a specific JavaScript. Now, theoretically, you could work on them independently. I know that those of you who've done a lot of web development, I'm sure you know that the dream of full separation of concerns has, in my opinion, never really materialized. But we try to do things to make our lives easier so that we can keep our head in a certain space while we're working. Yep. So we need a new component is what we need. And according to this, it says I modified this. I'm curious what I modified. Oh, okay, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the application. I'm going to add a new component. And the way I'm going to do it, there's many ways to do this. You don't have to use the Visual Studio tools. But I'm going to go ahead and say add Razor component, just so we can see what happens if we try using the tools. Don't forget, these are preview tools. When we get to the final GA general release of .NET 8, ASP.NET Core 8, and the Visual Studio 2022 version that will support it, this experience might be very different. So, or better, or I don't want to rely too much on this is what it's going to be. We're still in preview. I'm going to call this page controls.razor. Just going to call it that. Note that what I'm really doing, Rich, is I'm building a component. I'm not necessarily building a page. It just so happens that the component in this case is the page.
Okay.
I think as we get further along into project, we'll start building components that do smaller things that are more reusable. But we're just going to have a page called controls here. That's it. Because we're just going to play with HTML controls.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is this page is not renderable right now. Well, that's not true. I shouldn't say that. It's not going to show up. It's not routable.
Yeah.
It's not going to be in our menu. It's not easy for me to get to. I can't route to it just by saying control. So let's figure out what we have to do. We can take some inspiration from another page. And let's, this is how we code, right? We're going to cut and paste. Little joke there.
Yes.
We're going to say this page takes the route for controls. Okay. That's a good start, but we still have to set up the routing. And the way that we set that up is we use our navlink. We use the navigation that's built into, by default, built into navmenu.razor. Now, look, you can come in here and switch all this stuff around. But just to keep it simple today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this div, because all good HTML begins and ends with divs, I'm sure. That'll probably make a few. Not meant to rile anybody up. So the link that we're creating goes to controls. And I would like the text to just be controls. So we essentially have another spot in our menu. And that's it. I don't have to come into main layout and do anything. I don't have to even come into app.razor, because map.razor figures out its routing, because it's using the route view control. It figures out its routing by starting with a top level layout, which happens to be main layout. And it goes on from there. As it even kind of alludes to in the IntelliSense, is that route view will specify the layout that you give it, but then any further nested layout. So you can have a nice clean architecture of sub layouts, and then a main layout that sort of examines maybe that's the overall top level view of your site, but then some parts of your site are organized different ways, but there's some commonality. So you might have sub layouts.
Gotcha.
All right. So I think now we're going to find out if I know what I'm talking about and if this just works. With just those changes that we made, we do have now an application that has a home, a counter, a controls, and a weather. When I click controls, I just have a page that says controls. That's it. Nothing special. What I'm going to do now is if I go ahead and come in here, I do get this responsive design. But what's interesting is, and I'm going to chalk this up to preview, is I haven't seen this menu button work. And I'm willing to chalk it up to preview for now. We'll see what happens in release candidate. I haven't asked anybody. I haven't gone looking for an answer. I've just kind of figured it's, preview. I'm willing to keep going because I just want to work with Blazor. So, all right, controls.razor. Now, what is it that I want to do in here, or things that we can do in here? I'm going to take some inspiration from some tutorials that we will post if you're watching on YouTube, or even if you're watching on Twitch, you can go watch at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thedevtalkshow. And I'm going to get links in there. They may not be there live, but shortly after the show, so that you can essentially do what we're doing here. It's not going to be exactly the same, but what we'll do is let's create, let's use, so Blazor has its own set of controls. Like this is going to render a form element. So in HTML, we would just put form. And if everyone will indulge me watching, I'm going to start by using the Blazor controls and see if we can get this right. I'm not going to worry about model yet. We're going on submit. Let's give this form a name. And again, there are pieces, if you happen to be following along with the same tutorial that I'm kind of taking inspiration from. And the reason I'm using it is so that way you're watching this you can go straight to documentation and get more information. I used to put, and I still like putting time into my own home demos, and then I found there's actually a lot of value in like taking some inspiration from a documentation piece, because then folks can go just learn a lot more than what you can do
Yeah.
in a demo.
It's that commonality of everything that's already been built ahead, right?
Yeah, yeah. So if once again I am using Blazor controls and I'm saying input text, this represents an input form, and I'm going to tell it that it's going to bind a value. We're going to have to figure out what that means in a second. And we're going to say model1.id, which just has no meaning to anyone at this point, right? Like what did that even do? Well, at this point, it doesn't do anything. In fact, we have some problems where it's saying, I don't understand. I think what it's really telling us here is I don't understand what the return type isn't convertible to anything. It doesn't even know what model 1 is.
Right.
That's because we need code. So we're going to have people submit an ID for their Starship model. Okay. So what we need first is we need that model. So we're going to make we're going to need a class. So let's make this class start. And look at that. IntelliCode / GitHub Copilot went for it and guessed, is this what you want? Like, yeah, kind of. And I'm wondering if it inferred a little bit from here. It might not have. I don't know for sure. But what I want instead is I want a string, and I want people to be able to send in null. You all know how I feel about null if you've been watching the Dev Talk Show, but that's okay. I want you to be able to create a Starship with a nullable ID. So that's a good first step. The problem is I still don't have a model. So let's create one of these things. And this is also nullable because at the beginning of the form page, one may not exist. And I didn't get that quite right. So now I have an instance called, it's interesting that documentation, you know what I got here? That wasn't a 1. That was a
Exclamation. Yeah.
Exclamation, because it's using the bang operator. The exclamation dot is the one that says, I know it could be nullable, right? Because if I take this away, now it's going to say, hold on a second, you might be trying to use something that's nullable. And quite frankly, this is a warning which you are free to compile with. But there are many teams that like to set warnings as errors. So if I want to tell the compiler, I get it, I know that it could be null, don't worry, I'll take care of it. That's what that does.
Cool.
So now we have this functions. This will work. I actually even believe the class will compile and it'll build, and I think we'll see this stuff on the screen. But we haven't done anything special with it yet. For example, when I go to controls, well, it actually blew up on me because it says the edit form requires either a model parameter or an edit context parameter. Okay. Well, that's true. If you're following along, looking at the first documentation sheet, you're saying like, wow, Chris skipped some stuff. And that's true because I kind of didn't want to muddy the waters, right? This edit form needs to know what code model are we binding our work to when somebody's editing in here. So we use a model parameter for that. And we drop into Razor syntax by using an @ and saying, I want you to get the variable called model. And yeah, that's this one right here.
Okay.
So now that's bound up. Let's see. I think we're still missing something, but we don't have a button yet. I think this will run. It's not going to do anything super special, but that's okay.
Let's you should get your input control.
It's still, why didn't that work? Edit form requires either a model parameter. What did I do wrong there? Model equals model, method equals post, form name. I was wondering, do I absolutely have to have a submit? That would be interesting to me. The thing that I'm wondering is, do I need this yet? Supply parameter from form. Do I need this attribute which says the value of this property should be supplied from form data? I wonder if this is a piece of wiring that this doesn't provide.
I mean, there are different types of edit forms, right? It doesn't have to be a submit form. So
Yeah, right.
you would think it's not required.
No, I agree. I just want to see what it's going to take for me to get by that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you.
So still not happy about it. Still complaining that on parameter set. Could it be, let's see, could it be, oh, I know, actually, I think I know what it is. So let's comment this out. You know what I think it is I think that, let's take a look at this code right now. I am declaring that there will be a model instance.
Yes.
And that it is a type of starship that has a nullable ID. But did I create one?
Not yet.
I haven't created one.
Yeah, you've got a definition of one, but it's not like model equals new something.
Yeah, there's no constructor of or something like a constructor that ran to create one. So I've got a null model here. So I missed.
Wow, it gave it to you right there.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah.
Look at that. It sure did. It sure did. Look at that. Yeah.
We didn't have to think about it. It gave it to us right off the bat.
Cool. This is not what is done in the tutorial page, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that supply parameter from form for now. And let's see if this gets us by. Okay.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. And the interesting thing here is I have no real interactivity, which is all right. But what if I came here and I said model new starship and I said model dot ID equals NC yeah, right? Thank you. Oh, except the one thing is I didn't use double quotes.
Okay.
All right. So now, just curious how this turns out. We'll click controls, and this is filled in. So the model binding is working. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have a property set to bind for those objects.
Right. Yep. So that's cool. But now I want to change it. I want, I want some. Maybe I want to write it to a database, which of course we're not going to implement. So not right now. So what I'm going to do is, well, look at this. Look at that. Copilot is just saying, why don't you have a button of type submit with the value submit? And it turns out that's exactly what I was going to do. So we'll go with that. This is going to be real fun coming down here. I'm very curious now to see what we get next. So I need a handler for this.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm going to tell it what to do on submit by using a little bit more syntax here. On submit equals, I didn't say equals. Equals submit. Okay. So I'm basically saying go look for a method called submit. And now I'm curious, what does Copilot do? Okay. It's kind of like you want to do something. That's true. I was kind of thinking, console write line is okay, I suppose. Like
for now, right? We're not writing to a database, so we'll make sure we got there.
Yeah, let's just say it's submitted. We'll worry about getting the value in a second, and we'll go ahead and breakpoint here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now when we run this control and we go to the controls page, I have my default in. You know what I don't remember? I don't remember the designation for Excelsior. I mean, and obviously we need Star Trek fans are going to love this, right? I have to admit, I haven't thought about this in a long time. So let's see, can I easily find, oh, wow, what's it? NCC 2000, is that it? Yeah. Okay.
Cool. There you go.
Yeah. So let's change the designation. We're going to say we want NCC 2000, and we're going to click submit, And when I do end up in this breakpoint. So this is kind of a neat development experience.
Mm-hmm.
I end up in this breakpoint in the code. It's .NET code. But what I don't know is I don't know anything about this ID. So let's see what, I just want to see what Blazor knows about what was submitted right now or about this model. So we have a model here, and that's so tiny. I'm going to have to zoom in. So let's click over ID. And let me get ID on here. There we go. And I'm going to pin it so that we can zoom in. Oh, actually, we don't really have to zoom in. That wasn't so bad. Didn't change.
Yeah.
NCC 1701. So I'm guessing that you might be able to guess what code it was that binds that up when somebody submits. And it should be this. So now that we say supply parameter from form, let me end it so that we can look here. Indicates that the value of the associated property should be supplied from this form data for the form with the specified name. So we didn't specify a name, but I believe that we can do this. And we can say things like we could put the form name in here, and we could even put the handler in here, and then you can take it out of the edit form stuff, which I think is something we can try, but let's leave this for now.
All right.
What I think I will do is I will say, let's use string interpolation, and we'll say we submitted new ship designation. And I guess I just want to say model.id. And let's just see if we can get that out to the console.
Need a quote.
Yes, thank you. I was looking at that squiggly going, well, that has to be something. Did I put it in the wrong spot? What did I do here?
No, it's in the right spot. Doesn't the $sign need to be at the beginning?
Oh, yeah. You know what it was? That was me playing with JavaScript.
There we go. Yeah.
It
could be null. Yeah.
Could be null. No, I promise you it's not, even though maybe my favorite thing in the world to do. But that's okay. It's fine. So now let's bring our app back over, and we will submit a new designation. We'll click submit, and we are getting, oh, look at this. I don't think it changed. I don't think it changed. Well, I guess one way to find out is let's go, because I think when we head out to the console, whoops, I hate when they do that. No, go ahead.
Don't we need the binding to be two-way?
It's possible. So, okay, submitted divination. Okay, so now let's take a look. Let's go take a look. There could be one other thing that I think could be the issue. Actually.
Okay.
So we didn't get a change there. Now, one reason I kind of like to go through this stuff is because I could just copy the whole thing in. But what's interesting now is I think we're going to get a deeper understanding of what makes this all tick.
Right.
There's a piece that I did not add, which is I did not add an attribute saying that we're using render mode server or any render mode.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that it's not happy about this. The name attribute does not exist in this context.
Oh,
maybe I need to do. Still succeeded. Did I spell something wrong or do something weird there?
I think it's a preview.
It could be some preview tooling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with acknowledging preview tooling. That's fine. Let's just see if I've got it. Okay.
All right.
So now we are seeing that the binding's taking place. I think we needed server interactivity, and that probably set up in the background the little SignalR connection that's used in Blazor server. We could switch this over to WebAssembly, and we would see it all working that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting a model ID of NCC 2000. And more importantly, when I let this code do its thing, I can go to the console and see, okay, submitted new ship designation NCC 2000. So that did what we wanted.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Okay.
Now, What did you what I'm just curious what you think of this model. I mean, it's definitely speaks to a C# developer, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's familiar syntax that you're used to. It's not that I think you should only reach for Blazor if you don't know JavaScript. I think it's perfectly fine to reach for Blazor if you know a ton of JavaScript, but that you just want to maybe stay in a preferred platform, or even there's an interesting idea of just staying in one platform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you might also just like the model. You might say, like, look, I really think this flows well. I think I understand it. I can understand what's going on. It's easy to debug. I think those are all valid reasons to give it a try, right? So, I don't know. I just didn't know if you had any other thoughts before we try a couple things here.
No, I think I mean, that's why I've been kind of diving into it. I don't do a ton of JavaScript code, right? So for me, most everything I write is in C# in some form or another. So for me, this just seemed like the something I wanted to get a little deeper and start to spread the word about too, right? Because I think there's a lot of people who aren't aware that you don't need to, be writing JavaScript for certain types of applications if this can fit the bill. And there's, certainly
Right.
I don't have them committed to memory, but there's certainly a host of reasons why you might choose Blazor over a classic SPA or a JavaScript type application.
Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to show everybody. Here's the page in the documentation, and it actually should already be live on YouTube in the comments. ASP.NET Core, Blazor forms and input components. And in their example, we essentially recreated this example, but we did it out of order on purpose, mainly because I kind of like to figure out what wires up what instead of just splatting this on there. And then you don't really know for sure what made what happen. I learned a few things. I learned that we needed this to get server interactivity, to get interactivity of any kind. And I'm not sure that we fully understand this. It could be that we don't need this because it could be. I mean, we could take it out and find out because it was declared up in the edit form, but I don't know that for sure. That might be an interesting thing to try just real quick, since just to see if it works fine. It works fine. That would be great. And you can, we modified it a little bit. We have it starting with some data instead of it not having any to start with. And when I submit, oh, well, look at that. When I submit, I'm clicking, for those of you
You're
at
not getting
home
anything.
that don't know, and nothing's happening. So clearly we've got a, and it seems to me, it looks like this has to be brought together. Might be interesting to dive into why that is, or what else we can do there. So I want to try something real quick before we move on. I want to just try changing this to form and changing this to input, which feels more like your typical HTML. But this is interesting. This is complaining, but I'm not 100% sure if it's complaining. Okay, it really is. I wonder if it's because, do I have to do this? Yeah, so that's really interesting. If anybody wonders what I just did, this was bind capital V. And when I switched to just a quote unquote normal input form element, it didn't like that. Like, see, it's blowing up here. But if I switch it to bind value, then it's like, okay, that's cool. I'm not exactly 100% sure what's going to happen, but I think it's going to work.
And that's because you changed the parent tag, from edit form to form.
Well, so I made two changes, and we'll go back and show both of them. Let's just make sure this works. Oh, look at this. Anti-forgery stuff blew up. Okay, that's good to know. I think we can look into maybe how that works. But this is where we were just a second ago. Is we had an input text. We were using an input text field and an edit form field. Now, edit form, I'm wondering if edit form comes with anti-forgery. And what if I switch this to input, but I still use this syntax here, lowercase v. I wonder if this will work, and because perhaps edit form as a control encapsulates anti-forgery for you. I think you can get around this and implement it yourself. I feel like I've seen that in the documentation. But let's no, see, now it just doesn't work. So that's very interesting to me. I
Wow.
think
Yeah.
I find that really interesting. So I actually am not here. One of the things I don't want to taken away from this is, oh, so you have to use these special controls. I'm actually not sure that's true. And not only am I not sure that's true, I think if you continue to follow, it's possible that if you continue to follow this page, you might see other examples. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Now, what you do get by using edit form at the very least is anti-forgery is built into ASP.NET.
Mm-hmm.
You get that kind of for free, quote unquote. And anti-forgery is super important.
Yeah.
It prevents an attack where you might have a malicious user who isn't able to compromise your web server, but they are able to compromise a client in some way. And so what they do by compromising the client is they have some cross-site scripting or something in there that basically gets the form comes to you and they basically grab it, including like the cookie that says that you're you, and they run it from somewhere else. And they, well, actually, they can't grab the cookie, not if you use strict HTTPS, but they can basically run it from somewhere else and impersonate you and be like, oh, no, I have Rich's answer.
Yeah.
But the anti-forgery token, it says like, but you didn't have this anti-forgery token in the strict HTTPS cookie, so therefore, I gave you this key that says like, here's your form and here's the key that represents this form. You didn't have it.
Yeah.
So clearly it wasn't you. So you get that for free. So I would like on a future show to come back to this because I'm very interested in the idea of what can be done in the plain looking HTML. Is that a right way to put it? I don't know.
Or I guess just more the native HTML controls, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because we can do a second example right on this page. Because we're running a little short on time, I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in, but we'll talk through what this example does. This example is going to very simply, instead of using a form and a submit, we're just going to take the raw click event and work with it in a method that we haven't written yet called update heading.
Right.
And a variable that we haven't declared yet called new heading. And notice in this example, just native looking form elements, HTML elements. So what I need now is I need a couple things. Down here in our code, I'm going to need a couple little instance members that we're going to use. One of them is I need to be able to grab this new heading. So I'm going to have a string that takes that in. And then I want to display what is being called current heading. We're going to display that just right here. So the way I do that is I'm using just normal H1 tags, but I'm saying go get the value that goes in here, get it from here.
Yeah.
And we're going to start off by having it say initial heading. But we don't have our button handler yet. We need that still. So let's, again, I am cutting and pasting, and everyone will see where this code comes from. Whoops. Oh, wow. I accidentally hit page up. So here it is. Here's our button handler, and the button handler just takes the value that was submitted, well, not submitted, the value that happens to be an input at that time. This is not a form submit. This is just go out and grab it from the element and change the current heading variable to be new heading with 3 exclamation marks, Y3, doesn't really matter. But by changing this value that is bound here, we're going to see this change too.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. That's all the code I need for this little part of it. Just this part, this part. Let's run that. Click on controls. Blew up. Normally it requires a value for what is normally provided. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I switched this back, but I didn't switch this back. Okay. Had nothing to do with our current demo. That was my mistake in putting the edit form back. And like I said, I'd love to take a closer look at edit form sometime. So now we have this new set of controls, and initial heading came from here. But wait a second, that's what is current heading? Oh, well, current heading is a variable in our code section that is set to initial heading. That's good. That's what we expect. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to our heading is now west. And I'm going to click update heading. And it's all just going to happen when I clicked. Basically, this code ran. I can click that again. This code runs for me. Says, oh, somebody typed in west, set current heading to west. Oh, but don't just set it to west, add 3 exclamation marks. And then because current heading is listed here, it's going to automatically change that for me.
Nice.
It just happens, right? It's really neat.
What's cool is it just happens and you don't have that bind value designation in there as well, which is interesting, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm on the, am I still on the breakpoint? Yes, I am. So let's, in fact, the breakpoint just keeps clicking. Of course, that makes sense. So, oh, look at this. This is Blazor server saying what happened to you. Because I still haven't clicked continue. There it goes. So that was Blazor server going like, hold on, what happened there? I wonder how customizable that little bit is. That might be fun to play with too, to make it look and feel like your site, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the difference here, is this would be very much like using plain old vanilla JavaScript and HTML controls to just build your own interactivity, which is perfectly fine. But there is a protection you get from forms for your forms data, and it's anti-forgery, which is super important. So I think you just have to think about when you're taking data that is tied very tightly to the user submitting it, such as perhaps this was a site for you to update your driver's license data. You could put in a new address. You could say what, I don't know what else you do. You could say you're an organ donor. I don't know. Change your birthday. I guess you wouldn't change your birthday. But I want that form to be anti-forgery because I don't want somebody stealing that form from you and then basically taking over your driver's license.
Right.
But if it's not data that's tied specifically to this user, and your backend code is resilient to an attack that might be made on just somebody who just tries something, then you might be okay not stuffing things in a form. I just think, it just depends, right?
So if someone was, like, for example, someone was submitting a suggestion for a show, and we have an entry form that does that. What I'm understanding then is that's probably not a case where you would go ahead and implement the anti-forgery component because it's not personal data.
Yeah, like let's say we had a chat box, and people were just typing into chat, and then that showed up on a screen of ours, and we could maybe display it. We might not need to worry about it being form data.
Okay.
Yeah, I try to be careful thinking through the situation quickly, but I think that would be okay. It's definitely when we don't want the risk of somebody who's been compromised, that their data has been stolen, and basically their ability to interact with the form has been stolen, and so the anti-forgery token helps you there.
Yeah.
There is a ton of defense in depth that goes into a modern website, including your own site being resilient to cross-site scripting. You want to make sure you do that, using things like strict HTTPS cookies so that they can't even be accessed by JavaScript. All of that stuff is great. And then you still have the problem of we don't own or control our customers' computers.
Yep.
And our customers' computers can be compromised. It could even just be something as simple as a library that you're using that you trust that library. It's been compromised, or it has an attack against it that's open. And so you're using this, and next thing you know, your site is actually vulnerable, but you don't realize it. So a lot of this is defense in depth to say that even were the site compromised, even were the user compromised and some cross-site scripting is redirecting stuff to another waiting malicious server, that's okay because the anti-forgery token is going to prevent it from dealing with that data.
Right.
Not ideal,
Okay.
but again, defense in depth, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, we went through a fair amount of things. There's another way that I'm not sure. We try with a few minutes left to see if I can something that I think is kind of neat. There are other things you can do here with events that I want to make clear that we're not talking about today. Is I can take this on click and I can have an on click handler that gets the good old fashioned mouse event args.
Mm-hmm.
Because you might be, if you're a web developer, you might be saying like, well, I don't understand, like I feel like I lost something that I'm used to. And there are many ways to do this. You don't have to do this through Lambda expressions, but I feel like we'll kill two birds with one stone by saying, let's write a Lambda expression to do this thing. And in fact, I don't even know that we're going to need this anymore. And I don't think we're going to need this anymore. So how does this look? This looks, input what I wanted. I'm not sure if I wanted to. Let's just take this away for now.
Okay.
We won't worry about that. So what I'm going to do is the main thing I really want to show is that I can open up Razor syntax again right here, and I can create a Lambda expression right here, and we're going to say current heading equals new direction. I'll put 3 exclamation marks because that seems to be the thing to do. So I don't think I did that correctly. I think that's it. I don't quite have this right. I think what I really need is both.
You need one more. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So what's happening here is we're saying, instead of going and looking for an on-click handler here or wiring that up, we're saying, here it is. Here's the on-click handler. Yeah. And the handler is capture a variable from outside, current heading, capture this variable, and because it's captured in the Lambda, I can set it right here. And so this should work. And then I think we'll have time to see one more thing. This should work when I say update, changed it to new direction. Cool.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we can do, let's see if I can get this right here, is we'll use some string, and let's see, I'm going to do it again. We'll use some string interpolation, and we will look into E, and E has a client X. And in fact,
and what is E from an event or from an object perspective?
So we passed in E. This is the mouse. This is the good old fashioned Blazor version or translation of the mouse event args.
Okay.
Let me think.
What happens when you do a mouse click?
Yes. So when you're in JavaScript and you handle the, I feel like I've really, this is weird. What have I done here? New direction.
Move the second parenthesis back in.
You know what the problem is? This is part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's that I need to escape that parenthesis, but I'm not going to worry about that right now.
Right, and get rid of this one of the two. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're in JavaScript, if you handle the mouse click event yourself, you get mouse event args, and what Blazor has done is in its on click method, it has exposed to you a class called mouse event args, and mouse event args looks awfully similar, and that's intentional. Mm-hmm. So it supplies information about a mouse event that's being raised, and it intentionally tries to give you like, well, what key was pressed, what buttons are being held down, what keys being held down. That's definitely great for games, frankly.
Yeah.
Where is the pointer, and so on and so on and so on. How much did it move from the last time? Also great for games. A lot of this is just, it's just for games. That's what it really is. That's not true, but I like saying that. So this is a little bit more meaty than what we showed earlier. Right. It's in a Lambda expression, And when I say it's telling me where I click, so if I click in different spots in this button, I'm getting those coordinates.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. You do not have to do that in a Lambda expression, by the way. How much can I wind this back and how quickly? If I take this exact same stuff and let's just move it to the side real quick. Oops. I just want to throw it in a comment so I don't lose it. Oh, can't. That's not a razor comment. Let's throw it here. If I say, if we go back to our old syntax, which was what did the old syntax look like?
Current heading.
Yeah, I need a method, just like you said.
Yeah.
And we'll call it update heading again.
Okay.
But we now need that method back. So I be private, void, update heading, knows all about it. That's cool. But what I want is I want this. I want this instead. And I got one extra parenthesis. Okay. But here's the problem.
It doesn't know E.
Don't have E. So there is an override I can use. At least I was pretty sure there was an override I could use. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, yeah, that worked. It just took a second for the squigglies to go away. So the override that you can use is just put the mouse event args here, and it says, okay, I can bind. Yeah, I can do that. No problem. Yeah.
Go ahead. And I guess we don't have to make any changes up above to pass E in.
No.
It just knows E is what you need.
Yeah, it knows that. And actually, this is not uncommon in the JavaScript world either, is the button on click event. It takes a mouse event args, but JavaScript allows you to call a method without supplying all the arguments. It's also smart enough. JavaScript's also smart enough to say, like, well, you didn't supply it. I don't care. Whatever, but you did supply it. Whereas in C#, we do have a concept of optional arguments, but in your typical use of methods, that wouldn't work.
Right.
You'd have to at least pass null or something, which again,
yeah,
get me started on null. But this all still works. This all still works.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing where basically this has been overloaded to give you that JavaScript-like experience of like, if you want mouse event args, you can have it. And if you don't, you don't have to. And you are also able to do things like this. Let me put in like int something and then say new something. And then I gotta pass this in here, and I think I can say E and 17, and I'm pretty sure that all just lights up, and we can go say HTTPS. Oh, it didn't work. Of course it. What do you mean it didn't? The E
doesn't like E.
It didn't like E.
Oh, you gotta pass E. You gotta pass E in as a lambda, so it's E lambda to that update heading.
Okay. So there's no other way to get the mouse event args or to pass them. That might be the only way. It could be the only way. Custom event arguments. You could be right. Could be right. That I have to do it the lambda way.
Because you're specifying that other parameter. If not, then it just assumed, okay, you know, it's obviously the event args are for the mouse event args are coming along.
Yeah, maybe. So I suppose it would be this, right? And that.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I believe so.
Yeah. Let's try it. The app did start, got controls. New direction 17, so it clearly passed it. And so, yeah, that was it. At the very least, that's one way. That may be the only way. I try not to prescribe it in case we're just missing something, but
yeah,
that was a great call, Rich. That was awesome. So
only because I worked on that last week.
Yeah.
I'm building an application, doing it in Blazor, doing it with components, and I want each of my my component controls, I'm rendering them basically a bunch of questions, and each question renders a control, And then what I'm doing then is, well, I want to know what control I click the button on. So I want to be able to pass that through. So I was doing this same kind of wiring up to a method to pass in what my response was to the question.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And I mean, that's about it. It is 8:58, probably going on 8:59 here on the US East Coast. And we actually, if you're new to Blazor, hope this was helpful. We did a lot with controls and with data and some basic passing of data. There are you must have a ton of questions, and that's okay, because I think we do too. And this was really step one to saying, like, okay, let's get comfortable in here, go beyond the file new project where we just click the counter button all day.
Right.
And we stumbled around on purpose, because first of all, I think as new developers, if you're a new developer, you're new to Blazor, you should see that this is how we get things done, right? You try some stuff, you learn some things along the way. And we learned many different ways to interact with the same form components, whether it's input controls, buttons, edit forms. You can do all of this with checkboxes and all the other components too. So that was pretty fun. It was fun to even just try some things that went just like, well, let's just try this.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
All right. Well, hey, it's 9:00 here on the U.S. East Coast, so it is time for stand up, and hopefully you're not late for your stand up either. If not, if you had a great time, please hit the like button, ask us any questions, or tell us what you think about Blazor, how you're using it, down in the comments on YouTube. Thanks for joining us on Twitch, and if you saw us on Twitter at the Dev Talk Show, please follow us and spread the word. Like, all your likes and all your retweets and any kind of sharing really does help. Because more people are seeing these videos. We've seen it ourselves. So if it's the kind of content you like, let us know. It's definitely hands-on. That's what we love to do the most. But until next time, for Rich Ross, I'm Chris Gomez, and we will see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.